not exactly tech savvy. But even I kind of know that if I had the ability to sort of have 24/7 access to people's minds, even I might be able to convince them of something. And I would also note along these lines of, it's not, is it election interference? I'm not so sure, but it does sort of create voting, is that you've even got in, say, the US military, there's almost a class that goes out of its way to sort of not see China as a threat, to not take the necessary measures to take them on, and that is ultimately it's sort of a very successful bit of psychological warfare on the part of the PRC.
Well, on that note, we saw after the election a lot of U.S. media framing it like Taiwan voted for William Lai, angering China. We've seen that over the years. A lot of everything is framed as does it or does it not anger China?
Everything is angering China. You don't see a headline that says not angering China.
China's very happy today.
Yeah. There's one particular news outlet, and I won't say their name. Every headline they've got starts off, in a move likely to anger China, America did this. And that is pretty much how we do characterize things. And with this election in Taiwan, the headline should have been 23 million people mostly of Chinese origins have a free, fair, honest election and can choose their own leaders, cast the rascals out and vote some new rascals in. And why exactly can't they do it 90 miles away on the mainland? That is what really the most impressive thing about all of this is, and why part of the reason why China's so scared is because it's really an existential threat, and it gives a lie to everything that China says about, and everything Jackie Chan says about Chinese people needing to be handled toughly with a boot on the neck. But how many headlines did you see just praising this exhibit of democracy, consensual government? Very few. Which is not how it should be.
I do think mainstream media should use rascals more often.
Scoundrels
when they're reporting. Scoundrels, ne'er-do-wells.
Ne'er-do-wells.
Thank you,
Yeah,
I mean,
that one.
So given that everything angers China, right? I mean, like the U.S. political system has been afraid to take moves that would anger China, even if they support Taiwan, right? And so do you think, though, that whether it's this election or further U.S. moves to anger China, or that anger China, does angering China make them more likely to invade?
No, they're always a pretty foul mood. If you don't do what the Chinese communists want, well, they're unhappy. And even if you do what they want, you probably haven't done well enough, so they'll be unhappy about that as well. But you'd think by now, after all these years of empirical evidence, that there is nothing to be gained by trying to placate the People's Republic of China. You'd be hard-pressed to construct an argument along those lines. And what you really have to do is defend your own interests, defend freedom, defend your friends, stand up for them, and not do anything that is going to help your antagonist. But it's almost as if we don't learn and intentionally trying not to. But really, if we were to surrender tomorrow, I'm sure China would complain about the way we surrendered. So there's really nothing to be gained on that front, as I see it.
I mean, what if it was like a really big move, like the U.S. calls Taiwan an independent country and then also installs a naval base on the coast of Taiwan? Like, that's going to anger China, obviously, but like, is that enough to trigger a war?
Well, you never know. It would make them pretty darn mad. And that's what comes of ignoring sort of a problem for this long. It's a bit like not going to the dentist when your tooth hurts, instead just taking a shot of vodka. By the time you really need to go to the dentist, it's a problem that is not easily solved.
And you're drunk.
That's the upside. But
helps with the pain of the root canal.
But those are things that obviously they would not be taken lightly by the PRC. But if sometimes it's a choice between bad choices, and when it does come to this recognition of Taiwan legally and just by every measure of sort of what our legal requirements are, what international law allows, what precedent and former practice tells us is there's no reason America could not recognize both Beijing and Taiwan. There is no reason we can't do that, other than China would be angry. Um, so we could do that. Putting a base in Taiwan, well, maybe at some point it will come to that. There's ways to sort of have something like a base without actually having a base. But ultimately, it comes down to making it clear to the other side that uh, this is our core interest. And if you want to do something about it, we're willing to go as far as you want. If you don't do that, then the party that is willing to go a little farther is always going to have the upper hand. But if you're always going to back down, you can expect to ultimately be backed into a corner from where there isn't much escape. But those two things that should have been done a long time ago, both the recognition and some real military support for Taiwan. And if we'd done it then, you wouldn't need this root canal times 10.
I mean, I've had this idea that the U.S. should go to Beijing and say, look, we're going to recognize Taiwan as a country. Would you like us to recognize them as the one true China? Or would you like us to recognize them as a separate independent country and maintain our ties with you? And Beijing will not like either of those choices. But like essentially, how do you think that would play out?
Oh, I think the word incandescent would come to mind. You've got to also keep in mind that you've got to raise the costs to them, to these people. And as I said, you've got to make these costs personal. And maybe at the same time, you could provide a list of the billions of dollars. Say, once again, the top 50 guys in the CCP have got stashed away overseas. You recall how panicked they were in 2012-ish when a couple of U.S. Media companies did some excellent reporting and uncovered the overseas holdings of some of the top dogs, including the toppest dog. And they were furious about this. And that's the one thing that scared them. So you've really got to be able to play rough. And I'm not sure that we've got the nerve for it right now. So, it could be done, but it wouldn't be easy. And once again, all this stuff would have been a lot easier if you'd done it 15 years ago. And there were people saying, let's do it 15 years ago. And they were, of course, not exactly lauded for their foresight.